You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
This is episode 93 of Retired Racehorse Radio on the Horse Radio Network, part of Equine Network, brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products and Cashel Company. Retired Racehorse Radio is your guide to the adoption, care, and training of the retired racehorse. Brought to you in cooperation with the Retired Racehorse Project and New Vocations Racehorse Adoption Program.
Today, we have partnered with New Vocations to bring you an amazing panel discussion on the limited horse. We're joined by aftercare and thoroughbred training experts, Leandra Cooper, who you're all very familiar with from New Vocations, Bonnie McRae from After the Races, and veterinary professionals, Dr. Sarah Escaro from Hagyard and Dr. Morgan Adams from Unionville Equine Association. And we're going to highlight the limited horse and discuss what limited horses are exactly, what post-race careers are suitable for the limited horse, and why a limited horse may actually be the retired racer you're looking for. Not just that, we share our horsey holiday must-haves and how you can get back this holiday season. And last but not least, we share with you not one, but two adoptable horses. The temptation is coming. Stay tuned.
And they're off on Retired Racehorse Radio, the podcast that is your guide to the adoption, care, and training of the retired racehorse.
This is Joy Orr in Detroit, Michigan.
And this is Kristen Kovach-Bentley in Jamestown, New York, and you're listening to Retired Racehorse Radio.
Kristen, I have to ask, how much snow do you have? Because I see the reports, people living in New York by you, and it gives me seasonal deja vu.
Oh, yeah. No, we are. I forgot that happened. That was last week.
How did you forget?
Well, because we didn't get it that bad here. So,
well, that's good. That's a positive.
We didn't get like
you.
the 7 feet or whatever that people up in Buffalo got. We are a little bit south of Buffalo, like about an hour and a half. So we do get lake effect snow. We get a lot of snow, but we did not get that much snow, which was great. So we just got the appropriate amount of snow, which is, enough to make it feel Christmassy and pretty. So it was fine. It worked out.
What a positive spin. It is so proven that you are a northerner by heart. I, meanwhile, had like 2 inches of snow and I immediately became a Grinch. I'm just going to throw that out there. I was like, Zach, when are we moving down to Lexington? That's our first stop in the long-term plan to get closer and closer to Ocala.
To inch your way south. Yeah.
Yes, I have a whole evil plan that I'm scheming.
Well, you can't let him know. Now he knows.
It doesn't sound like he's against the plan.
Oh, okay. Well, that works out then.
Yeah.
So we made out okay. Just, I don't know what we ended up with total. Like, this is going to sound very flippant, but like, I don't know, like a 1.5 feet, or so, which is very doable. It's nice to ride in. Shorty blew out a big abscess, and it's much easier to keep a horse on snow who's recuperating from an abscess than in the mud. So I was very happy with that.
Positive. That's a true positive.
Yeah, it was great. It was fun. Very festive.
Well, I love your radiating positivity. I think more of us could use that as it gets dark by 4:30 if you're in the north, and you wonder all of your life choices on why you live here as an adult. If you're an amateur, like a junior rider who's under 18, you can blame your parents for this, but everyone else, like, we chose this. We chose this and no one knows why.
No, it's okay, though. This episode comes out December 10th. So by the time everybody's listening to this, you're just 2 weeks away from the winter solstice. And after that, the days start getting longer. So
isn't that the real holiday of the year? Like, in all honesty, winter solstice starts getting lighter.
Absolutely. That's why we have Christmas, right? Is to be like, candles everywhere, bright lights. We're on the up and up. We're on the upswing.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. So with winter, Kristen, does it affect your riding too much?
It definitely changes like what I do and where I do it. So actually the other day, you and I were chatting on the phone and I called you instead of texting you because I was sitting on a horse and I was riding through, this is going to sound super janky. I was riding through the gravel mine that's on our farm property. We're leasing a section. I highly doubt the gravel miners listen to this podcast, but if you did, I was not riding in the gravel mine. Because I don't think I'm supposed to be in there, but after hours, I figure nobody cares. So it's not like there's a giant pit in the ground that I'm going to fall into. They're just sort of like digging away what used to be a big hillside, but in its place, they have this like very gentle slope. and it's a really good footing when it's wet. So it's just like riding like on a public trail system, that might be like a grit or gravel track. So it's actually a really nice surface for me to do some hill workouts. So I had our Irish draft out who needs a little conditioning for his top line. And we were just cruising up and down the hill and calling joy and having a lovely afternoon. So I don't do a lot of that in the summer because then I'm out riding in the pastures, but I don't want to tear my grass up in the winter. So it's the gravel mine or bust.
Hey, it works. It works. It's a good creative solution. And also for anyone listening and wondering if you should ride in a gravel mine, maybe just double check everything. Like we didn't give you permission. Just double check.
Yeah, no, you didn't hear it from me.
Yeah.
So, and no one's gonna, blow me into the gravel miners. I do see them fairly frequently and they're like, hey, yeah, whatever. It's all right. So.
Well, I can't say I have anything that exciting on my end. It's been mostly just cold here. We've had a lot of cold winds. And most horses tend to get quite fresh when there's a temperature change like that. My horse has decided she wants to cuddle as it gets colder.
How nice.
It's been really lovely. I feel like I'm having my own saddle club moment at 30, and it's really nice. So
embrace that. Absolutely.
Yes. So I don't know if anyone saw my recent Snapchat. Oh my gosh, I don't Snapchat anyone. Instagram stories. I have a whole herd of mares. They're not all mine. They think they're mine. And my new nickname is Mother of Dragons at my barn.
Oh, I love it.
Yes, because when I get out there, all of the mares, there's about 7 of them, crowd me, and they all want to come inside with me. I only handled 2 of them. I don't know where the rest of them have gotten this concept. But that's becoming my new problem, is managing the mares and making sure, I guess it's because I bring them salt blocks, so they're waiting for me to bring them more things. But
that's so funny that's like a high value enough thing that they're like, the bringer of salt, she's here,
There's like a handful of them have their own boarders who own them, and then the others are lesson horses, and I'm just like, you are cared for. Why the attachment? But it's fine. It's entertaining. It makes content, but it also means that they chase my horse away because they don't want her to come in with me. So I've had to protect her from battle, and she rewards me with cuddles.
That is like the worst part of, there's so many advantages to keeping your horse out on turnout, but the worst part is bringing in one at a time.
The geldings are always awful. The mares have always been really solid until we decided that they belong to me and follow me everywhere. So.
Well, that's on brand. If I could see you every day, I would also kick other people who were trying to take you away from me. So.
Oh, well, thanks, Kristen. I appreciate it. But enough
That's a real friendship.
That's a real friendship.
I would kick someone else in the shins for talking to you.
Oh, that'll be a part of our merch coming 2023.
Yeah, that's
heard
a quote.
It first here.
Quote for the quote wall. All right.
Absolutely. Well, enough about our lives, because we can go on and on about all the things we have planned coming up for the winter in 2023. But we have a very good panel planned, Kristen. I'm super excited to talk about the limited horse because we actually both adopted limited horses. And we're going to learn a little bit more about what they are and how they're actually a great adoptable choice for someone. So I'm super stoked for that.
I'm going to get my burning question answered, which is, how do you get over that fear that you're going to break it? So can't wait for that one.
It took me a very long time to figure that on my own. So I hope we can help some of the listeners here who may be going through that or interested in a limited horse at this time. So very, very cool subject to talk about, especially right before the holidays. Many of you might be considering using your Christmas money to get a horse. It's perfect timing. And that being said, before we jump into everything, we're going to hear from our premier sponsors, Kentucky Performance Products.
This Nutrition Minute is brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products, the company that simplifies your search for research-proven nutritional supplements at kppusa.com.
If you've ever had a horse with diarrhea, you know what a frustrating problem it can be. Finding an ingredient that works to dry up the diarrhea becomes a high priority. It turns out that researchers have found one, a yeast called Saccharomyces boulardii. It has been proven to improve and halt episodes of diarrhea. It supplies specific nutrients to the lining of the small and large intestines, and these nutrients promote healing of irritated tissues. It also supports improved starch and sugar digestion in the small intestine, reducing the opportunity for imbalances to occur in the hindgut. Nalox Advanced, made by Kentucky Performance Products, contains Saccharomyces boulardii, along with a blend of fermentation solubles and stomach buffers. Nalox Advanced is recommended for horses of any age that are suffering from diarrhea. It also supports a healthy digestive tract in horses at risk for gastric or colonic ulcers, such as performance horses or any horse that is constantly on the go and exposed to stressful situations. For best results, Nalox Advanced should be fed on a daily basis.
This Nutritional Minute has been brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products. You can find all of their terrific products at kppusa.com.
Joy, we've done it again. We have an incredible panel lined up for our episode today. I'm super excited to introduce everybody. We have with us 4 guests representing both New Vocations Racehorse Adoption Program and After the Races. So we're going to introduce everybody first, and then we'll say hello, and then we'll get started. So today we're going to be talking about the limited horse and everything you can do with them and why they just might be the horse for you. So with us today, we have, of course, a friend of the podcast that everyone's familiar with, Leandra Cooper from New Vocations. She is joined by Dr. Sarah Escaro from Hagyard Equine Medical Institute, which is based in Lexington, Kentucky. And then, of course, from After the Races, which is based in Elkton, Maryland, we have the founder and director, Bonnie McRae. And she is joined by Dr. Morgan Adams from Unionville Equine. So 2 different nonprofit organizations with us today that specialize in rehabbing and adopting out the limited horse. So we're excited to have everybody with us. Everybody say hi.
Hello.
Hi. Hi.
Hi there.
Hello. All right. So I'm going to get us started with our first question, and we'll sort of round table this one a little bit. How do you all define a limited horse? We'll start with Leandra.
Well, I guess that could come in lots of different flavors and varieties. So it's just a very vague term. I would say a limited horse is one who is generally we're talking about physical limitations, though that of course can vary. But I would say as a very generalized term, we're talking about a horse who may be restricted to flat work only, maybe even more limited than that. I'm sure we'll go over it, but there's quite a range that you can cover in that. But limited being one with, generally, we're talking about not as much physical capability.
And that's a good answer, right? Because like we all understand generally when people are like, this horse has no limitations, but it's a little more of a gray area to define what it means a horse that has limitations. So,
and like, is that even ever fair to say a horse who has no limitations? Like, let's be real. So it's such a vague term, and we'll go into it, but hard to say where to start with that. So that would just be my way to kickstart it.
Yeah, right. We picked a doozy of a question to start with, but here we go anyway. So, Dr. Sarah, do you have anything to add to that? How would you define a limited horse?
Yeah, I would kind of mirror, I guess, Leandra's comments on that. I think kind of the only thing that really stands out to people is obviously the physical attributes of the horse that might potentially be limited from their previous career. But I guess just to kind of throw some more gray areas in there, it could be, a mental limitation that's more of a short-term thing where you just have that kind of letdown from the track, or it could be a more long-term limitation. And again, it kind of ranges across various, aspects of the horse. But yeah, I would say the majority of the questions that clients kind of pose at me or these rehabilitation facilities and rehoming facilities kind of pose is definitely more of the limitations in their physical capabilities.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So I think like tonight's discussion, we're going to gear that towards mostly physical limitations, but yes, certainly, mental and emotional limitations are a whole other issue we could talk at length about too. So yeah, good point.
Pandora's box has been opened.
Right. All right, Bonnie, what are your thoughts? What's a limited horse?
I think if you want to start at kind of the highest end of the spectrum, you could say a limited horse is one that has injuries or conditions that preclude them from participating in the most demanding activities under saddle, such as racing or upper level eventing. And I feel like you can kind of take that and then go down from there. And that's saying that we, of course, all know that there's plenty of horses that do those things with existing injuries or issues. But I would say that would be like the highest point that you would start limiting a horse if I had to pick a place. And then it can obviously range from there.
That's kind of helpful to have like a like a definition, like with a step-by-step to follow. So nice. And Dr. Morgan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's kind of easy going last. I think you guys have pretty much
we'll switch it up next time. Don't worry.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Is defining if they have a physical or a mental limitation, and then it's kind of just identifying where you think they'd be most suitable. And a lot of times it's like there might not be actually any limitations if you look at trail riding for this horse, and so it's kind of just like a variation of how you look at the situation. But yeah, I agree with you guys. I think everyone's pretty much defined it quite well.
Yeah. I feel like we're all sort of starting from a point of being on the same page. So now one thing that came up in someone's response, maybe Leandra's, I think, was like a flat only career. So at what height do you consider, like flat versus jumping? Because I know some people are like, oh, a 2-foot fence doesn't really count as jumping. And other people are like, the horse isn't truly jumping until 2.6 or even higher. So for Bonnie and Leandra, you guys who are adopting horses out, how strict is that flat only versus, limited jumping?
I'd be happy to start with this one. Yeah. I think there are definitely the horses that we would consider flat only, like really shouldn't be taking their legs high off the ground. But I think a lot of them, we say things like they could jump a log to get from point A to point B on a trail. Mm-hmm. Occasional things like that are reasonable, I think is kind of where I would consider a non-jumping horse.
Leandra, what do you think?
I definitely agree. So I guess really the way that we're defining them is all within the terms of what home they will be successful in, what career path they'll be successful in. So even a horse that we might deem as adoptable might be able to step over an obstacle or hop over an obstacle, or even hop over something at liberty and not really show us any circumstance that would be questionable or that it could put them in jeopardy. But there's so many different considerations of it. So like I have a horse right now who's a war horse who has osselets that look terrible on x-rays. He moves really well. He's navigated that really well. In a free lunge video, just offered to hop over obstacles. We have this beautiful footing and we didn't have a rider on him. And he just is an extreme athlete and just decided that's what he wanted to do. So it looks really good, but am I about to say, go ahead, stick him in a career path where he will be navigating obstacles under a more, routine controlled consistency? No, I don't think that would set him up for success. So it's all really within the parameters of the way that we plan on utilizing them and some assumptions that we're making, I guess, in terms of the way that the horse is going to likely be used in order to get to said goal or physical level. So if I say, okay, especially like the way that we've determined these levels on with new vocations, we have created a metric system to simplify it because there's so many different variables, of course. So if we say a horse might do well in a career with 2-foot jumping, a horse who's even more limited, maybe they could step over a 2-foot fence once in a blue moon and would never demonstrate any issue from that. But that's not really what our assumption is, right? Like if we're saying this horse could theoretically do well in a career where they're going into a show hunter ring and doing 2-foot fences, like that's a very different ask. So it is really important to kind of look at the framework within which we are creating these assumptions and saying what this horse is or isn't going to be able to do, because I totally agree with the statement that, even for this horse in question, who is almost 17 hands, going over, he could step over to 6 fence. And he has stepped over logs probably that big and never jumped in, didn't really do anything wild. He's not really like putting his body at jeopardy. But we're really talking about that concussive force. We're talking about like the implied torques and forces that are part of a career path involved in the whatever goal or height or level that we're saying this horse will or will not be successful in. So it's not like the one jump per se. It's not like that height per se.
Right.
So it is tricky because like we're saying, oh, it's a 2-foot horse. But again, like this horse at Liberty who doesn't have a rider on, who has the nice footing, like he wasn't sore the next day. He wasn't sore 2 seconds later. He didn't care about it at all. He could probably do that once a week and we would never see him take a lame step. But again, you add 150 pounds to him, you ask him to do that more routinely, you ask him to do that 10 fences in a row. Now we're talking about a much different demand. Mm-hmm. So it is really important to kind of understand what we're talking about in that.
That's extremely helpful. It sounds like more when you're deeming limited horse, it's more for the long-term career of that horse and to give them the highest longevity of that second career possible. And my next question would be, and we can start with you, Leandra, of what I'm sure that you and Bonnie both have an idea of where you think a horse can be by your own training expertise and working with different horses of different levels. How does your relationship with the vet come in play? Do they solidify that for you? Like, how does New Vocations take your first examination as a trainer and now have a veterinary professional help you with it?
I'd say it goes hand in hand. And one of the most important relationships that we have as trainers is that with the vet, because we can see the day-to-day with a horse. We can see patterns from having the experience with horses with similar injuries, or kind of understanding how the horse has progressed. So we can take those observations and what we know as a trainer and work with the vet to come up with a more comprehensive look at what that long-term is going to look like. Because then the vet is bringing to the table all the professional aspects of the ramifications of that injury and what that's going to mean in terms of those projections that we're coming up with. So really, in an ideal world, that is hand in hand so that we can create this forecast as best we can with the knowledge we have for the horse, because really nobody's got a crystal ball in this. So the more you can work together to figure out what's going to be the right situation for the horse, the absolute better. So Dr. Escaro plays an extremely critical role in those projections for us. And even I'm sure that she would say the same. Please feel free to chime in if I'm totally off case. But, we have horses who in the preliminary evaluations, we're thinking a certain ceiling for performance level, and that horse might exceed our expectations. But as a general rule, I'd say that we are pretty conservative in our estimates because we do not control all the different variables. There's components of luck. There are massive components of what happens after the horse leaves our barn, whether somebody's going to continue the same routine. We could send out a guideline and maybe it doesn't get followed strictly. So really, we're trying to create this forecast. And so that's one of the most important relationships that I would say is that with our vet, where we're really hopefully coming up as a team with that prediction.
I love that. And I'll hand it off to Dr. Escaro next of, I'd love to know a little bit more on the vet side, what you're looking for, and then we'll bring it back to after the races after you, Dr. Escaro. But what are you looking for to say, whether this horse is looking at a limited career, whether it's strictly flat, strictly pasture, strictly, we can do some jumps, but maybe 3 feet's where we're at. What are some of those things that are key indicators for you that this horse does not have a fully unlimited career?
Yeah, no, for sure. And, I think Leandra did a great job of saying it. It definitely kind of takes a village because they do get to see the horses, on a daily basis and see how they're progressing through their protocol, whether it's rehabilitation of an injury or if it's just potentially retraining and the problems that come with some of that before they adopt them out. But definitely kind of to piggyback off of that in regards to what I look at when I'm looking to, I guess, manage the expectations of these horses, because I hate using the term limited sometimes, because I do feel like everybody's like, oh, it's like, it's a very, very hard limit with these horses. But the things that I take into consideration the most is obviously going to be the history of the horse. I think New Vocations does a pretty bang up job in regards to finding out, especially if they have had previous injuries, where they're at, when they happened, how they healed, is it something that we're still dealing with? At that point, I kind of come in and do my physical exam and my lameness evaluation and some more advanced diagnostics, and kind of seeing how things are healing versus if we find something new. I would say the majority of what we kind of are looking for and at and considering are going to be more of the orthopedic kind of issues that we might see from a younger horse that trained very hard and put a lot of stress on their bodies. But again, I think giving that initial diagnosis and that initial prognosis, it does tend to be dynamic in a sense, like Leandra said. And, some horses exceed our expectations. Some horses might, kind of not meet those expectations that we have for them while they're in the program. But I think the most important part is taking into consideration kind of what sort of issue are we dealing with? Again, most of the time it is orthopedic. So is it, more of a bony related issue? Is it a soft tissue related issue? What's the size? What's the quality of the repair of the injury? What can we do to maintain? Because again, a lot of these horses, although we might put a limitation on them, they do, with maintenance, end up having these long-lasting, successful athletic careers doing something else. And it's just more so about educating their new owners and kind of, again, managing their expectations and trying to control the variables as much as we can. But I think the biggest thing is I'm very much so a science-minded person, very nerdy. So the biggest thing is kind of getting my accurate history and then kind of taking into consideration what our intake exam looks like and going from there as things progress and things heal. And we try to come up with the kind of best level that we think it'll excel at, kind of at 100%, I guess, instead of being like, well, it could do this, but, we don't know if it's going to hold up. I think, the more conservative we can be, the better, just because I think, again, that kind of helps manage everybody's expectations in the long run. So.
Excellent. I love that. I love that you guys are conservative at New Vocations. And I'm going to pass it to Bonnie next to see a little bit more about how After the Races handles that as well. So what's a little bit about your culture and practices as far as working with your vets to determine what makes those horses considered limited and how do you just establish the parameters?
I think I agree with most of what the New Vocations team said. We are also very conservative with how we market our horses as far as their physical abilities or limitations. And we start our horses when they come into our program, obviously with as much of a history as we can establish from their racing career. And then the first thing we do is have an intake exam with Dr. Adams, where we do what I consider is like a pretty thorough soundness exam. It might not replace a full pre-purchase exam, but I feel like we don't miss too much. And then we're pretty proactive with our diagnostics to get a full picture. I'd rather find out what the horse has up front rather than give it too much time to wait and see. But having that relationship with a vet, a good relationship, working relationship with your vet, I think is one of the most important relationships you can have as far as, getting the best picture of these horses and what they can do and what they'll be best suited for. And, so I think we take a very similar approach to New Vocations. And then as we start riding and training that horse, we might circle back with our vet again and say, hey, we're doing this and the horse is reacting this way. Do we need to reconsider anything? And so it's kind of a hand in hand, but I would say that our relationship with our vet is the most important relationship that we have to help these horses.
Love that. And Dr. Adams, can you tell us a little bit about what that exam looks like? Be great to hear kind of what it initially, if you walked us through the quick snapshot of it.
Yeah, so we always start with the history. Bonnie kind of gives me where the horse came from, if it has any known injuries. She does a great job of getting me a very thorough history, like how long the horse has had off, has it had any downtime, did it have any previous injuries that it went back to racing on, that sort of thing. And so that's very helpful for me. And then we kind of just start right at the nose and go to the tail. We, just do a general physical exam. We look at eyes and mouths. We listen to hearts and lungs, kind of just going over through the systems. And then we just kind of palpate their limbs and see what we have for range of motion or pain on palpation, pain on sort of passive flexion. And we do that for all their limbs. And then we kind of watch them walk and then jog down the aisles. Sometimes we'll go outside and go into the round pen if we need to. Sometimes we'll do neuro exams if that's called for, those sort of things. And then just getting a general idea of the horse's temperament as well, and kind of what it can handle as far as like, rehabilitation as well, like kind of do hand walking. Is that even in its, brain capacity at this point? Kind of get small paddock turnout, that sort of thing. So that's a really helpful part of our initial evaluation. So, and like Bonnie said, we're always kind of circling back and looking at the horses as they progress through their rehab and can they do more, or, as things come up. Horses are forever changing and humbling us. So it's definitely a continual process.
So what I've learned so far, other than lots of things, is that I wish I lived closer to either or both of these vets, because I'm in a little bit of like what we call a horsey frontier here in Western New York, where my closest lameness vet is about 2.5 hours away. So like it's a little bit of a production to get a horse there. So I have a horse that, as far as I know, I'm one of those naughty people who took in a free horse without doing a PPE, and then have another horse that somebody else did the transition off the track, and she had placed some limitations on the horse, based on his physical condition when she got him. So he would also probably benefit from like a post-purchase exam to know exactly what his limitations are. But my tendency, because I'm a giant worrywart with both of those horses, is I'm constantly in this mindset of like, I'm going to break my horse.
And some feeling,
of the, right. Yeah. Like we're just like, kind of hover horse moms, which I guess is a good place to be, rather than, going out and galloping up and down the pavement or something. But, I don't have a nicely groomed arena. We're out on a cattle ranch, basically. So we don't have great footing. My horses are turned out all the time. So they're constantly, potentially tripping and falling over things and, running into each other and just being horses. So it's very easy for me to get into that like overly bubble wrap mindset. So, and I would imagine if I had a horse that I knew was limited to a flat only career, I would be even more so in that mindset. So how do you guys kind of help coach people through that are similar, to be like, yes, the horse may be quote unquote limited, but you're not probably going to break it. And we'll start with team after the races. Bonnie, how do you help people through?
So I think, to me, the biggest thing that can help is honestly just education, coming to understanding, the ins and outs of the horse's injuries or issues that you're knowingly taking on. The more educated you are on a subject, usually the less scary I think it is. And having that really good vet in your corner that hopefully is helping you through the process of considering this horse and taking this horse in. They should all be able to give you some level of confidence in your abilities and skills to take care of this horse properly. The other thing I would mention is it's just important, I think, to trust the experts, trust the experts around you, whether that's your veterinarian, your trainer, the adoptive organization you're coming through. To some degree, we're all trying to set this horse up to thrive in its next home. We're not going to place it with you if we don't think it's going to be set up for success. So I think some of that is just kind of having that mindset of, trusting the information that you have, doing more research if you need to, and, try not to stress about it too much. I think it's easy for us. I think it's kind of almost like gets into like a mental health question of, how much anxiety you have.
That's probably accurate.
And so like some of that might be a little more on the human side that you need to work on. But I think as long as your goals are reasonable and the experts agree that the horse can do the job that you have for it, just try to take a breath. And, if the horse needs a little maintenance or a little extra TLC to kind of baby it along or make you feel better, I think that's okay.
So Dr. Adams, sort of a follow-up question. Are you able to kind of help provide, adopters and probably as well as, your own clients and patients with, maybe like some, not quite warning signs, but like, okay, if the horse may be retired with like a sesamoid injury, like, okay, here's what you'd want to watch out for preemptively. Like how much of like a prep package can you give people, sort of tailored to the horse?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, some of it depends on where they are in their rehabilitation process as well. A year out from a small sesamoid fracture is going to be different than a horse that's, 4 months into it. But definitely, depending on where the horses get adopted at in that process, we can help them kind of identify a proper rehabilitation plan and points when they can then check in with their primary vet at home and kind of, pass the baton to someone who's more local. I think, just being vigilant about looking at your horse is not necessarily, I always tell people, like, you don't have to know what the problem is. You just have to know that it's different from what it was the day before. So it's like, if you palpate a leg all the time and usually it feels cold and tight, and the next day it's warm and squishy, well, you don't have to know what that problem is. You just have to know that that's very different and that now you should call your vet. You know what I mean? And so again, it's like having that relationship with a vet that knows what your horse's, initial injury is and where you are in the timeline. That's just really helpful. So yeah, Bonnie does a great job too, just like, getting adopters information and history and, trying to provide them with that like care package when they leave as well with as much information. And, we're always here and we talk to adopters a lot and we encourage pre-purchase exams because again, it's all about, expectations and setting that horse up for success in that way. So, and, I think horses probably do more partying in their paddocks than they ever do when people are riding them. So people are always like afraid that they're going to break their horse while they're riding them. It's like, I'm always like, they party pretty hard in their paddocks. And I think that it's pretty, it's pretty okay for you guys to go out on the trails with him. So, but I totally understand because I'm an anxious person too about my animals.
Oh, good. You found your people here. So
I actually didn't think I was that anxious of a horse owner until I just adopted a 2.5-year-old. So Morgan has finally seen that side of me, I think, recently.
Yeah, I would imagine you kind of like see it all eventually, in your position, but yeah, maybe not with a 2.5-year-old.
Yeah, it's funny how it's different when it's your own horse,
Right. So Leandra, at New Vocations, do you get a lot of adopters maybe like me and Joy that would be, paranoid that we're going to break down a quote unquote limited horse?
Yeah, I certainly think that you are not alone in that. And I would say it's pretty routine that I would get phone calls after adoption where people are just asking me about little changes where I mean, there are so many times where I'm just like, well, why would you call me instead of your vet? Like, I can't see the horse. Yeah. And it will be simple things or just like horse things, like a cellulitis thing that comes up like 4 months down the road. And I'm like, I have not seen this horse for months. How would I know? But I would say that's totally normal. And my personal horse is one that I adopted as a rehab and had, I think he had come in and they suspected that he had injured his superficial digital flexor tendon and he had a lesion in both the superficial and his suspensory. And so I spent a good amount of time getting to know him from rehab. And to this day, I promise you, there is not a single harder horse that I've had to rehab because he was one who was really explosive on the walk to the round pen, not to mention the controlled rehab exercises under saddle. And it was like a mess. And now I don't worry about him so much because I've gotten to know him so well. And I think that Dr. Adams said exactly what I would have said or would have added to that, which is just in getting to know your horse so that you can recognize when there are changes. And in that way, you may be able to identify if there is a problem in any way, not exclusive to any previous injury. But I think that I harp on overall fitness and health more than anything, because we will adopt horses with no known injuries, which is not even to say that something couldn't happen to them like any horse, or that there couldn't be something that could show up on a radiograph that could never show clinical signs, or, any combination of those things. And I think people carry this mindset that like a horse who doesn't have those known limitations is somehow immune to injuries or
yeah,
right. And I'm like, oh, I mean, couldn't be further from it. And I had discussions with people in the racing industry as well, where it's this kind of like, okay, well, if you have a horse who didn't race and wasn't competitive like that, and didn't race for that reason, that doesn't make them like immune to damage because they haven't had it, or a horse who could have an osselet and some sort of like jewelry in that sense could have like worked through these extraordinary difficulties of that career path and could just be kind of like, I know exactly how to move my body in a way that I can endure tremendous strain and I never get injured. Like there's any sort of combination of things, right, where we create these mindsets around when a horse is okay and when they're not. But again, I go back to this, like I always harp on health and fitness, because even a horse who, like say a horse has had just a bowed tendon, right? They've bowed their superficial, like relatively easy. We like pray for injuries like that because we're like, oh, simple rehab can be like pretty much unlimited. Like there are a lot of different, obviously, outcomes, but like pretty simple. And you could have a horse who rehabbed really well from that and could go on and be pretty unlimited and have an adopter, like be in a good program, and then have an adopter who keeps them relatively fit, or if they have downtime, then brings them back slowly and considers just like any other animal. I mean, for goodness sakes, like this is how I consider for myself too. Like I just recently ran a 5K, having gone to the gym for like 2 days that week before, and my knee hurts. I'm like, of course my knee hurts, because like, what am I doing? And the only reason I survived that 5K is because it was 18 degrees and my body was numb. So it's like, if you don't prepare any horse for the task that you're asking them to do, you're setting them up for failure no matter what. I don't care what injury it has or hasn't had. Like you're setting them up for failure. They're going to have some injury, or, there's some freak accident in the pasture, and like none of them are like immortal. They can do this. But if you want to set them up for success in the best way possible, then you also need to mind them as an athlete in order to treat them like an athlete. So you can't just take a horse out of a field and expect it to then be able to consistently endure a high intensity athletic requirement. So you want to set them up for success. You make sure that they are fit and healthy for the job you are asking them to do. But when you have a horse who has had an injury and may have, like they did bow a tendon, and those fibers will never go back to their original elasticity. We know this, but they could go back to a pretty darn good job of like doing the job that you want them to do. But in order to do that, you need to make sure that the rest of the body is strong and able to do its job and do its function appropriately, so that you're not compensating or putting undue stress on joints or ligaments, like any combination of those things that are going to be setting them up for failure. So much of it depends on what you do with it and the way that they are prepared for the job being asked. I'm like a broken record right now, but I told you I harped on this. This is what I say all the time, where I'm like, yes, they've had this injury and here's how it looks now. These are the facts of it. But how it does in the future, all these variables that we don't have the crystal ball for, depends so much on you that like, that's why we have to be conservative, because we can't expect the above and beyond always. And there are always these unknown factors, but there is so much you can do as an adopter or anybody who takes on a horse who has had a previous injury that will determine those controllable factors of how they do in the future and what they can do and what their future looks like for them.
Right. Okay.
I don't even know what you originally asked me at this point, but I hope that answered it.
Well, it's fine. It just added 400 more questions to me to be like, am I doing it okay? Am I doing it right? So
you're doing great.
Yeah. Thanks, Leandra. Yeah. Thanks a bunch. I think we would like to hear from Dr. Escaro. If you have any other advice for people like myself, who is now more concerned than ever that I'm going to break my horse. It's fine. No pressure. It's fine. You don't have to convince me.
This is what Dr. Escaro lives with all the time, is having to deal with my inputs like this.
Yes, I'm like the biggest worrywart about my own horse. And so I have to have plenty of my colleagues talk me off the ledge in regards to not being worried about breaking him. But again, we get these horses and they have their jobs on the racetrack. It's definitely they are companion animals, but they are definitely an athlete that is maintained. And it's a very professional, relationship that they have with their trainers and their jockeys. And then you bring them into these secondary careers and you do have all the emotions behind it and the attachment. And, he's like my kid. So God forbid, I know he's got a non-displaced chip somewhere. And I'm like, the last thing I want to do while I'm running cross country is think, oh, I just messed his knee up and now he can't do what he loves, So I'm right there with you guys in regards to being a bit of a worrywart about your horse. But just to kind of mirror what everybody has said so far, both Leandra as well as after the races team. I think the biggest thing is to educate your adopter or your client, because again, just because they have one injury doesn't mean that it's going to potentially re-injure that spot, depending on what it is. That also doesn't mean that they can't potentially get new injuries. Horses love to hurt themselves. They love to keep us on our toes, right? So again, knowing that it's there is great. Knowing what their normal is, whatever the level is, behavior-wise, temperature-wise, is that joint always a little puffy, or does it look a little bit puffier today? Or, it has an old splint, but is it hot now? Or, she usually loves it when I put the girth on and doesn't ever get, kind of ticked off at me. And now she's kicking out, she's biting, she's grinding her teeth, she's doing whatever. Like, knowing what normal is going to make such a big difference in knowing what that abnormal is. The good thing about being a worrywart is we're always way over the top in regards to kind of noticing even the littlest of things. The other thing, kind of to mirror what Dr. Adams said, as well as everybody else, and then kind of go off of the fact that we're very lucky in the areas that we're in right now, Kentucky and whatnot, that there's vets everywhere, right? So it's very easy to get a hold of a vet and, pick your poison, reach blindly into a barrel and you get something, but having an established relationship with your vet when you do decide to adopt this horse, and, them kind of knowing what their normal is and them being aware of their history so that they're there and ready to advise you. Obviously, I can kind of speak for the new Vocations team as well. I know Leandra takes a lot of phone calls from adopters, after they've got the horse there. I've also talked to several adopters about things. And, I think we're all kind of happy to help create this picture for people so that they can be as educated as possible, so they can manage and maintain these athletes as much as possible and as best as possible to kind of get them to do what they would like for them to do. And again, kind of manage expectations. But it is very hard, I guess, because once they do leave our nest, like Leandra said, we don't have a crystal ball, anything could happen. So again, kind of understanding what maintaining a potentially quote unquote, I guess, needier horse would be. If it's me, I throw everything at it and hope something sticks. And I'm like, well, it doesn't matter how much money I spent because he's got all these things, so he's going to be perfect. You know what I mean? But being able to supply them with the appropriate, farrier kind of management and maintenance, putting them on the correct joint supplements, having that relationship with your vet. If they do need, joint injections down the road, or they need, chiropractic work or acupuncture work, anything like that. And then also kind of managing, again, your expectations of what that horse is going to do. Just like Leandra said, you're not going to run a 5K and feel great after if you're not, that's not what you do normally. So, expecting these horses to just potentially come out of the pasture and do something amazing, like even if they're not limited, that doesn't mean that they're not going to be sore the next day or they're not going to potentially tweak or twinge something. So again, I think kind of educating yourself, thinking, kind of as smart as possible, setting yourself up with a good village around you to kind of help you decipher what is and is not normal. I think that's the best way to do it when you're a worrywart. And I would say that most everybody, at least on this panel, as well as anybody that's listening, will agree. Like, they're always going to be a worrywart, but, at least trying to educate yourself and surround yourself with a good team, that makes a huge difference. So,
yeah, absolutely. Super solid advice. So I think we have time for one more question. We'll go around, and this will be hopefully one to end on a hopeful note. So I'm going to go in reverse order. So Dr. Escaro, I'll send this right back to you. Who do you recommend as the ideal adopter for a quote unquote limited horse? We're going to forever say it like that now, right? Quote unquote limited.
Right. You guys sent some of these questions, and I was like, that's really hard to put what is the perfect adopter? Again, what is perfect for one rider with a horse with certain limitations might not be perfect for the other. So again, I think someone that is willing to educate themselves, willing to work hard, love the horse, do everything they can for the horse, obviously with the help of their supportive team behind them, is kind of the ideal adopter. I think that both programs kind of do a great job in regards to doing background checks on where these horses are going, what those owners' expectations are. If they're interested in a pre-purchase, they definitely promote that. So again, they're as educated as possible about what they're getting themselves into long term, because it is a commitment. I mean, these horses race. You have your war horses, but a lot of horses race, until they're 5, 6 years old, and then you've got 20 more years with them. So again, I think finding the person that is ready for that kind of commitment and ready to kind of take on all the responsibilities, whether, it's a limited horse or not, and kind of what's perfect for one person versus the other and what their goals are versus another. That's kind of the best thing, is to try to, I guess, get everybody on the same page. I definitely don't know if there's an ideal adopter or not, because, my version of Land Rover is running training at a local horse trial versus somebody else's that might be something, going to junior hunter finals with it. And again, every horse can teach you something. So it's just a matter of finding the right one, and the right one that fits your goals and expectations. And also on the flip side of that is something that that you are willing and capable of maintaining in all senses of the words, in regards to, the financial maintenance, the emotional maintenance, the time commitment to it, like all these intangibles that we talk about when it comes to being a horse owner. So again, I don't know if there's necessarily an ideal adopter, but I definitely think, picking that person and finding the right match in regards to goals and expectations and commitment, I guess, capabilities are definitely the way to kind of go about finding the best adopter for those horses.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's bang on, like the type of person, more like, now we're like, sounds very deep, but the type of horse owner versus like ideal discipline, because that of course is going to vary case by case and horse by horse. But yeah, I think that's spot on with the kind of horse owner, who could be embarking on that journey. So great answer. Leandra, what would you add?
I would say, from the mental standpoint, exactly what Dr. Escaro is saying, where you want somebody who's going to be able to navigate maybe sort of some of the challenges of it from an educated standpoint. But I like to say like somebody who's realistic, and that's just like from a good horse sense perspective, where if you have a horse that has a more limiting injury, then you're going to think in broader terms of just like what the actual, what the physical opportunities are for the horse. So if you have one is not going to be able to go cross country and jumping and doing exceptional physical things, then there are so many other qualities that make horses unique or special or capable. So finding somebody who has the vision and perspective to be able to appreciate those other qualities about the horse would certainly be on my top list of the ideal or the exceptional adopter for a more limited horse, who has this understanding, but also values all these other things about the horse, but also having somebody who has the resources and the team if they need to have something looked at, or if there needs to be a recheck, if they're getting like a rehab type horse, who has that more like attention to the horse, whether that be in like the little details that changes or just like in the general appreciation, like I mentioned. And I think that's kind of what people get hung up on, is like, how can we utilize this horse physically? Like, what can they do for us, when really horses have so much more value. And that's where I think like the more limited ones, we as adoption agencies and the people who are trying to portray them to the world and all that they have to offer, we're so often, trying to show their versatility and show all these other qualities, or develop these qualities so that they can be seen as valuable. And so that ideal person would really be somebody who already has that appreciation for those things, whether that be doing natural horsemanship type things, or using them for therapy programs, or using them for just a companion type, or a buddy, or so many different type of things. Just appreciating a trail and being able to hack around. So many things where there are all these other opportunities and all these other things that they can do. So it's like stepping away from just the like purely physical, I want to achieve these goals and how can this horse help me get there? That it's like, that's who I would love that adopter to be, is somebody who just would appreciate those qualities in the horse.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and that's, we're celebrating the versatility of the thoroughbred and not just their athletic ability, I think is pretty key too. Like, they don't all need to be able to jump the moon. That's just not realistic. I'm never going to jump the moon. So,
No.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, I mean, even my horse who has done exceptionally well in his rehab and has, beautiful ultrasounds now and has gone through all this rehab, that it's like with all the other things in my life that happen, there's so many times it's like the peddler's kid, right? That I'm just like, oh, I don't have the time to ride him again. Oh, I don't have this. But he's like my buddy too, where I'm like, I wouldn't give him up for the world. And I just appreciate that so much about him, that alone has value. And that's where I always hope that somebody people can extract that from their relationship with their horses and not just be thinking about purely what they can do for them physically. But everybody has goals too. So, I mean, I get it, but for these guys specifically, that's what I look for.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Dr. Adams, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all keep reiterating the same point of just trying to identify people's expectations and, New Vocations, and Bonnie does a great job too of interviewing these potential adopters and getting an idea of who they are as people and what their expectations are, and then kind of trying to match them almost with these horses that would be most suitable for them. Because I think when you have expectations, if they're not met, then that's how kind of things spiral down. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest things is just, trying to find that suitability of what this horse can do and what the, potential adopter is looking for, and trying to make those connections possible. It's kind of, it's the best for both worlds. The horse is going to, succeed, and the owner is going to, be really happy with that horse as well and be able to provide, a great long-term home for them. So yeah, I think you guys are all on it. So
yeah. So, and it really sounds like everyone so far is looking for, adopters who have a pretty realistic sense of their own, what they're going to be doing, that realistically, we're not all going to climb the levels of eventing. So we don't need a horse that can climb the levels of eventing, and that's not to slam eventers, because I think what eventers are doing is awesome and physically demanding, but, realistically, we just don't all need that horse. And I know that.
I think the majority of us just need the pleasure ride that they can get us to the baseline goals, but we're here to share our peppermint candies and get our selfies and get the horse kisses. You're looking for that best friend at the end of the day, is the majority of us.
Yeah. So Bonnie, I think you're our last one to hear from on this question. What do you think is the ideal adopter for a limited horse?
Yeah, I think rather than kind of reiterating what everybody else just said, Leandra commented on something that I was going to comment on, but in a little more detail, which is just, finding that person that doesn't look at a horse for what it can't do, but rather what it can do. I think it's a bit of a personality question too, glass half full or half empty kind of person. Right. But I think, just having that ability to look at this horse and see all the positives that it has to offer versus the quote unquote limitations that it might hold it back from doing certain jobs, I think is what you should look for in an adopter, just somebody with that right mindset that's going to go into it, looking for that best friend or that partner that can do everything that they want to do, rather than focusing on what they can't. So that's all I would add.
I love that.
Yeah.
I feel like, we need to, what we didn't do yet, and I don't know that we will tonight, come up with a different term.
For a limited horse.
Yeah.
That'll be our assignment for 2023, is thinking up the new term for everybody, new marketing.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do a listener poll, after this episode comes out and say, okay, everybody listened in. What do you think we should call them? Because the number of times even just now I said, quote unquote, limited, that's not smooth. But I mean, they're just differently abled, maybe.
I'm not sure that sounds much better.
No. That really doesn't. No, we'll scratch that one off
We'll figure out something. We'll
work on something.
Yes. That's our gift to you guys this year, is Chris and I will put our heads.
Yeah. We'll come up with one good idea. Well, Leandra, Dr. Escaro, Bonnie, and Dr. Adams, this has been really, really cool. Hopefully this has given our listeners a little more insight into, how you define a limited horse, what they can do, if the limited horse is right for them. I think for most of us, it sounds like they probably are. So we'll invite our listeners, of course, to check out everyone's full bio in the show notes. Certainly take a look at the awesome horses that New Vocations and After the Races have to offer at their websites. And yeah, definitely if you guys adopt a limited horse or any horse from these organizations, let us know, because we'd love to follow along with your journey.
Well, I'm here with Tony from Cashel. You all know it from the ads you hear all the time on this show. But we're at the trade show, and this is the point of time in the year where we find out what's new coming out. So what's Cashel have new coming out?
Oh, we've got a great lineup of 32, 34 wool top pads.
So describe them.
5 different colors, real vibrant, bright, sharp-looking pads.
What makes them different?
Well, it's the fill. The wool felt on the inside is a natural felt, and the fleece on the bottom is 100% merino.
Oh, really? Okay. So these are soft and squishy pads.
Well, not real squishy, but soft, and they do absorb shock and saddle fit.
What would they retail for? What are those?
That's about $119.
That's the right price. Yeah. Anything else new with Cashel coming out?
Oh, we've got more saddle pads coming in the fall, new strap line coming in the fall. It's a two-tone that looks great with a great buckle set on it. We're always in development, so there's so many things, projects in the works.
What's still your most popular product? Is it still always the same things year after year?
Fly. You bet.
Yeah,
Fly
that's what we all.
That's
how I knew you in the first place was fly masks. Yep.
Yeah. Many years ago, we were primarily fly masks and kind of had some tush cushions and a few odds and ends. Today, we've broadened that offering to saddlebags, strap, head stalls, breast collars, bell boots, leg protection, and it continues to grow.
Is there a place where somebody can go and see all the products?
CashelCompany.com will give you a good offering.
There you go. Well, thank you, Tony. It's been fun seeing you again.
Hey, thank you. Good to see you.
Well, Kristen, it's December 10th by the time this episode is out, and that means we are not that far away from Christmas. So a lot of us probably have our Christmas shopping done, or you're a late shopper, which is totally fine. Zero judgment on our end. I'm one of those too. But I thought it'd be kind of fun for us to share some of the horsey winter must-haves that really make a difference for us, for our listeners, to maybe spark some ideas, whether for their trainers, their best barn friends, or themselves. I think it'd be great. So I can happy to start with this. Like my favorite, hands down thing, and I've talked about it every single year on this show, is the Aurora heated vest. Non-sponsored. Please email them and tell them to sponsor the show, because I've given them way too much credit. But it does get me through the winter every year. I love that vest. It's just rechargeable. I heat it up. I think I've had it for 5 years now. Jamie ended up buying one, and now you might buy one too. One of the best things I've ever gotten as a winter horse girl, for sure. What about you? Is there something that really stands out on your end?
Yeah, I've gotten some pretty cool, like horsey holiday gifts before. I think the best, and I actually put a picture of this on our social media the other day, was the Arctic Horse wool riding skirt. And unfortunately, that company seems to be out of business now. There's a bunch of like knockoffs you can find on Etsy and stuff. But that thing is really cool. It's the opposite of cool. It's very warm. So it's wool and it's lined in fleece, and it works like a big quarter sheet that you basically wear. So on really cold days, I'll just wear that for chores, and I'll be stomping around in my skirt, taking out hay and bringing horses in. I have one too,
and I will second this. That is a phenomenal thing to have when you live in the North, for sure.
Yes. Yeah. And in general, like, I think if men realized how practical skirts were for keeping their legs warm, they would also be wearing them too. Because like, it just makes a nice little heat pocket. Guys. Yeah. Like, just go for it. No one's going to judge.
No one's going to judge. No one's going to judge. Well, I'll do something a little less glamorous, because the ones we talked about they're a little bit on the pricier end. But something that also makes a big difference for me are hand warmers. I go to Costco and get like giant boxes of hand warmers. I ask for them for like stocking stuffers. And it's not even just for me. I actually take a piece of fabric or like a leg wrap, and I'll put it around my bit. So while I'm grooming my horse, that is warming up my bit for me, because I'm not always near a place that has electricity for like blow dryer or anything to keep my horse's bit warm. So I use them for my horse. I use them for myself. I have at least 2 giant boxes in my tack locker right now. So those make a great gift.
That's a good call as a bit warmer. I haven't thought of that. I just do the method in my hands, but my hands are very
the
cold.
old school.
My recommendation for a stocking stuffer, I have mentioned this before, and this is a hill I will die on this show at some point. Everyone needs a wild rag. I don't care if you ride Western or English or dressage or you drive or you just look at horses. Wild rags are like the West's gift to horse people. So it's a silk scarf, comes in a big square. You can do all sorts of pretty knots with it. They come in a million different patterns and colors. You can coordinate it with everything you're wearing. They're cool in the summer. They're warm in the winter. You can tuck it down in the front of your vest and make it all nice and snuggly and get all matchy. They look really punchy, but they're super, super practical. So everybody whose name is Joy can expect a wild rag stocking stuffer this year from me. So
ooh, exciting.
I will make you wear one.
I'm here for it. I will take a photo and I promise.
Oh yeah. We'll do a little tutorial on how to tie the knot, so you can look like a real cowgirl.
Definitely some great ideas for sure. And I'm going to wrap the gift ideas up with just something very simple, also very practical: chapstick and hand cream. So everyone right now, whether you're in the South or the North, you have chapped lips, you have rough hands, our skin's getting dry. It's just that time of year. So hand cream, chapstick, great stuffing stockers for any equestrian. And that being said, if you are still doing your holiday shopping, there's some great ways to give back to charities that you love or aftercare associations. Amazon Smile is a great way to do it. Just double checking to see if you want to support New Vocations, Retired Racehorse Project, After the Races, all of them. Anyone that you love personally, it could be a local rescue to you. That's a good way to do it. I believe PayPal also has that option, Kristen.
They do. Yep. You can just add $1 to your purchase or however much you want and add it right there and they'll make the donation for you.
Super easy way to do it, or even shop from some of those groups who have merch. We know New Vocations does, as well as the Retired Racehorse Project has their own shopping groups that supports the organizations and the mission that they're doing for retired racehorses. So you can always gift someone something from those shops as well. And if money's kind of tight for you, because we understand that could be the case, you can always volunteer at one of your local rescues over the holiday season. They'll definitely appreciate anything you can do or items that you can donate. So just a couple ideas to get back this holiday season if you're looking to add a little generosity and help out the horses that we love. Well, Kristen, I absolutely love that panel discussion on limited horses. I feel like I took away a lot of great knowledge and I have a lot less guilt or pressure maybe about the fact of training my limited horse. But it is that very special time where we feature our adoptable horse of the week, and we are bringing you 2 horses, which I'm super excited about. We are going to talk with Leandra Cooper and we have Bonnie McRae, who are on our panel. And we're going to start with Leandra with our New Vocations adoptable horse, Stanfield. Tell us a little bit about this guy.
Stanfield, Stan has been the love of my farm life from the moment he got off the trailer, because I am a diehard underdog proponent, always, forever. And while he gets probably knocked off people's hot list all the time because he's got a sway back, this stunning gentleman at 16.3, which I'd like to point out too, if you measure his hind end, it's over 17 hands. He's just the 2019, so he's still growing. He's gorgeous. He has such an attractive head. He's got such attractive features. If you look in his eyes, which all of us horse people know, you can tell so much about their expression. He's just so kind. I love this horse. He is, not a horse that you might pick out of a match, but his sire's Gun Runner, who I absolutely love. He's got really nice breeding. And he, like I said, he's a big goofy baby. He's kind. He has done a lot of maturing in his time with us. And the main thing that we've worked on has just really been his feet. You can see in his pictures on his profile on our website at horseadoption.com. He looks like he's got flippers on because he had glue on. I like to call them clogs, but they're just glue on easy boots because he he needed to grow out better sole depth, and his foot angles weren't great, and he caused him some discomfort. And then he's just kind of awkward in his baby stages and his growth stages. So he was like wearing these flippers, and he'd kind of trip on himself, and he's just goofy, right? So we've done all this cross training with him, and now he confidently walks around like logs in the backfields and can open gates and do all these things that make him so versatile, like way beyond what a lot of the horses who come and get scooped up really quickly get exposed to. And now he's had all this exposure and maturity, and now he's just in regular nail-on shoes. And we actually just bumped him up to a level 4 on our physical capabilities scale. So that's to say that he's been cleared for up to 3-foot jumping. So now he's kind of like a cheating, quote unquote, limited horse, because now he's been cleared for more work, but he still has this sway back, obviously, which, like I said, he's just 3 going on 4. So it's not like what you'd see in the senior horses where they've just kind of lost their abdominal muscles and they're kind of slacking. Like he was born like this. He has no sensitivity to it, but it is something like, unlike our conversations about injuries that have formed, this is just something that he was born with. It's the way he is. He's rocking it. And we're really proud of his development here, but he has been on the website for months without any takers. So he is still looking for a home. And I'm just such a fan of him. And you know what, with tack on, you can't really even see his sway back so much.
I was going to say, Leandra, like I had an Arab, so not a thoroughbred, who was born with a sway back as well, also a chestnut. She was by far one of the best riding horses in my barn. So cushy to ride. You just, as long as you have the tack set up, a good saddle fit and a good cushy saddle pad, it's just such a solid horse. I could put kids on her. I could hop on her. I could put any beginner on her. She was one of the best horses I ever had.
Yeah, your saddle's not going to go anywhere. It's not slipping.
No, we called her the Lazy Boy Sofa. It was great.
I was going to say, I was just thinking, this looks like a dream bareback horse.
Or as my dad would say, that's a deep sitting couch. You just have a nice deep sit in it. You're okay.
But I mean, honestly, especially since we've been talking about the more limited horses, or I was even thinking like modified ability, right? So is there it's just a different set of skill set. But this is a horse who, I mean, realistically, when he first came in, like if you were going to plop a level on him from the beginning, we'd probably be at like 1 or 2, because he was so clumsy. If you were trotting him, he would fall. Like he would routinely fall. There was one occasion he literally like went down on a knee and had dirt on his face. He like did a bow because he just was trying to like navigate his way around like his foot changes and his flippers, as I like to call them. And he's just come such a long way, but like nobody has invested the time other than us who's in our program. But like, he's not the horse that people jump on and adopters are like, oh, I can tell that he's so kind and so versatile and he does all these things. And he's just been sort of pitted in this more limited category. And now, he's just been bumped up to the levels, and hopefully we're going to get more attention on him. But realistically, I mean, this is a horse who's had this potential this whole time. And, we're very lucky that now we're able to bump up the levels and bring him to a different category of attention. But he's just developed into such an exceptional horse that I think he's kind of like this showcase diamond in the rough of like horses who have been able to graduate to different levels, but who have had that this whole time. So it just kind of even goes to show what some time and energy and investment in them will do as far as expanding their horizons too. So Stan's still looking for a home. And you can see his profile at horseadoption.com. If you go to the horses tab, you can see Stanfield here. He is tall, he's big, he takes up tons of leg, and
he
really
is only $1,000 with 50% off for December right now. So he's $500, folks. $500 gets you this cuddly horse. Leandra, is he hugging you in this photo?
No, that's Julie. That's my assistant trainer.
I was like, so cute.
And I will tell you what, because I had just changed this right before we started the recording. I bumped up his adoption fee since his level is higher now to $2,500. But if anybody is listening to this and is hearing this recording, I will still honor that price. So his adoption fee will still be $500. If you are an approved adopter and interested in adopting Stanfield, please let me know that you've heard this recording. And I'd be happy to honor it, but for everybody
there you
else,
go.
he will be
Everyone
50% off $2,500.
So loyal listeners, you get a special
right.
gift from Leandra this holiday season.
This is my gift to you.
Love it.
Well, thank you, Leandra. Check out Stanfield and all the other horses at horseadoption.com from New Vocations and get your applications approved as quickly as possible. They go so fast there. They really do. Okay. Jumping into Bonnie, we've never featured a horse yet from After the Races, so I'm super excited to have you on as a guest to do this. We are talking about Rogallo, who I love his name. It sounds so regal. Tell us a little bit about him.
Yeah, Rogallo is definitely a volunteer favorite in our barn right now. He is a 6-year-old gelding by Curlin, who was actually born in Florida. And this is very official. His height is 16.2 and a smidge. There's just like a little extra there that some people really care about. So it's there. He only raced he raced 33 times. We just happen to have horses in our barn that have raced closer to 70 right now. So he had a pretty decent career. And from all reports, he was a really good boy at the track, and he did retire with an injury, and he actually had surgery to remove a fragment from one of his medial sesamoids. But the rehab went super well. And the surgeon, he actually went to Patty Hogan in New Jersey, who's, in my opinion, one of the best surgeons, at least on the East Coast, if not the country. She's just awesome. And
I'll second that.
Yeah, she's fantastic. And she thought that he could do well in like any flat home and possibly even do some jumping, just maybe not the highest level that's out there. But in the barn, he is just absolutely a doll. He is very quiet, very sensible. He has these adorable, pointy, expressive ears, which is like the first thing anybody notices about him. And they are always turned in your direction. Like he is just one of those horses. And when we were actually taking photographs of him, this is just a testament to his personality. We were standing him up for photos. And, most people who take a lot of horse photos have a noisemaker. They use the all ears app or some variation of winning horses to get them to put their ears up. And this horse was so unimpressed with the fake horse sounds. He was like, no, this isn't interesting at all. So I actually went into my barn and I got a training tool that we have. I call it my plastic stick for lack of a better term. But it's basically a mop, but instead of a mop head, it has these sort of tassels made out of caution tape. So you can imagine it can make some fun noises and kind of wiggle around and give a horse something good to look at. He was also very unimpressed with my plastic stick. We have several photos actually of the plastic draped like all over his face but we did get some cute photos because he kind of reached for it with his nose because he was more curious than worried about it. So that's just kind of how his temperament is. He also has only been with us at the time of this recording for 3 weeks. So he's a little newer in our program, and he came from a place where he was turned out in nice, beautiful, sandy paddocks. So he was kept barefoot very well there. And then he unfortunately moved to Maryland, where our footing is more typically, dirt and grass. And of course, coming into winter, we had some pretty hard ground. So he needed a little bit of help just transitioning to different footing, but he's now coming out on the other side of that. So he should be going to work, back to work here any day.
He's so cute. Those ears, they are so funny.
He's a perky dude. Yeah. He's very perky.
He is
I
very
have
perky.
this saved on this front shot of him where he's just like, hello. He is so cute.
All those photos.
Curlin. That's awesome.
It's funny. I might get some haters for this, but like all the Curlin babies that we've had in our program, for the most part, haven't necessarily been the most successful racehorses, but they've had like the best temperaments and just been really fun partners for their adopters. And I think he's definitely going to fall into that category. So I don't know what else to tell you about him. He's just wonderful. He's a really good guy. He gets along really well with other horses and turnout. He can go out with geldings, go out with mares. Like he's just easy. He'll fit into pretty much anybody's barn.
Love that. Well, where can people find more about him and how to apply to adopt him?
Yeah, they can just visit our website, aftertheraces.org. And there's a horses tab to look at our horses. And of course, there's a how to adopt tab with a link to our application. And once you get approved, we'd love to meet you, have you out to see some horses or, just help you match with one even remotely. So, just reach out.
Love it. And he is $800 for anyone wondering. So All these aftercare groups just really nickel and diming us here.
I know. I will have to give the same kind of caveat that his adoption fee is $800 while his feet were adjusting. So as he gets into training, that might go up by the time of this episode airs.
Now this recording.
Yes. But I will also honor that fee for anybody who listens and references this podcast. So there you go.
Retired Racehorse Radio
incentives.
Special. I love it.
Incentives. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you both so much for joining us and sharing these lovely horses. We hope they find the perfect homes. And should you adopt either Stanfield or Rogallo, please let us know. We'd love to feature them on our social media and hear how they're doing.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me. This has been fun.
Thank you.
You can find our show notes and links to our awesome panel guests on the website at retiredracehorseradio.com. Like us on Facebook and Instagram, just search for Retired Racehorse Radio. Follow us on Twitter at Horse Radio. You can find me on Instagram at The Horseback Writer and on Twitter at Kristen Kovach. My email is kbentley@therrp.org.
You can find me on Instagram at MisfitMare, and my email is joy@horseradionetwork.com. Thank you so much to our amazing sponsors, Kentucky Performance Products and Cashel Company, and our partners, New Vocations Adoption Program and the Retired Racehorse Project. And don't forget to check out all the other shows on the Horse Radio Network, part of Equine Network, at horseradionetwork.com. Remember to set your goals high and love to learn from every ride.
And always add more leg.
Bye, guys.